Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from FantasyFootballScout.co.uk. I don't even know why I say that anymore. Everybody knows how to get there, don't they? Well, it's another deadline. It's another Friday. Here we are again, and this time I am joined by the one and only Sam Bonfield, of course, of the FPL family. Every week we've had different guests. Last week we had ourselves a hit BBC comedian, but we've gone one better this week because we've got a member of the FPL family. It's good to have you here, Sam.
Thanks for having me. What an intro. I've got something to live up to now.
You're going to have to be funny as well. You're going to have to be even funnier than the comedian. That's your brief.
I'm not very good at being funny. That's not my thing.
Well, not on purpose, perhaps.
Yeah. I may be unintentionally funny. That's maybe my thing.
Well, how are you feeling at this particular point in time? You were telling me before we came on the stream that you've got some other things to sort out with your family's connection with FPL, because, of course, it's not just you and Lee anymore. The little ones are getting older. They've got their own teams. It's, all hands on deck in the family household.
Yeah. So I had the FPL show this morning, came home and was like, right, Max, let's sort out your team. So we sat down, we made the transfers. And then as I was about to go live with you, I was like, I don't know if I press save. So I kind of went and had a look. So I knew I'd made the transfers, but we hadn't sorted out. I hadn't moved the players he wanted to play off the bench. So thank goodness that I was on this stream, really, because otherwise I would have massively been in the doghouse with him later.
Yeah, that is one deadline you don't want to forget, not just your own team, but everybody else's team as well. We become responsible for those particular things. And speaking of being responsible for things, we're also going to be responsible for helping other people with their teams as well. So first things first, everybody get your questions in the chat. If you've got some big questions for me and Sam ahead of the deadline, throw them in there. As ever, the usual policy applies. We'll do our best to get to as many of the questions as we can. If all the questions are about the same thing, we will probably duplicate. And if you want to guarantee an answer, you know the way to do it. A super chat is what will get you a guaranteed answer. So that's how it goes. That's how to do the stream, and hopefully that helps everybody get the information that they need. Speaking of information that people need, FBL Marshall, we get this every week. This wants to know where I get the Scout shirt from, the green one. I got it because I left Fantasy Football Scout. It was a leaving present. So if you want one, join and quit, and you'll get one.
Well, to be fair, everyone gets one now. All the Scout team have got one now. I'm trying to convince the powers that be that we should sell them, because I do think there are a lot of people that would like a Scout shirt. I have actually got a load of them in the boot of my car, weirdly. So maybe I could do some sort of raffle. Raffle them up.
Or stick them up on a Facebook, like if I don't sell it, it's going in the bin page, one of those.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, without wanting to upsell too much, because I've got some upselling to do in a minute, the Fantasy Football Scout shirts are really nice because they are the material that you have on an actual football shirt. So not only can I wear them on the stream, occasionally I do a little bit of upselling of my mates down at Goals on a Tuesday night by wearing it there. So I mean, it's just the possibilities are endless. So watch this space, I suppose, or watch like Sam's boot.
Yeah, I just pop them out of my car boot every now and then. I don't know why they're in there, to be honest. When I was given them a few weeks ago when we had our team meeting, and they've just stayed in there. I need to bring them out and put them with all the water bottles and mugs and stuff that I've got sitting in my house as well.
We have so much merch that's just waiting for people to come and collect it. So yeah, keep badgering us, because then we can take the fact you're badgering us to the higher ups, and maybe they'll get us sorted with some commercial upselling abilities for them. So do keep those coming. Speaking of stuff coming, keep those likes coming as well. We've currently got 104 people in the chat. Only 16 of you have liked the video, so that of course is completely unacceptable. Let's get that resolved before we get to our questions. And before we get to our questions, a couple of things just to let you guys know. First things first, it is still not too late to sign up to Fantasy Football Scout membership. You can still save up to 30% on those preseason prices, even though we're heading into Game Week 3. So hopefully that's helpful for people. There's so much good stuff in that members area. We're going to talk through some of it in this particular video as well. Even going now, what have we got? We've got about an hour and a bit until the deadline. That's not too late, because of course it will help you for Game Week 4, 5, 6, 7. For the rest of the campaign. So don't forget that. Also, a word from our sponsor as well, which this week is Smarkets. If you weren't already aware, you can back up your FPL selections by betting on this week's most notable players at smarkets.com. Smarkets now allows you to bet on whether you think a player will get more or less than a certain number of points. For example, this week, if you think Rashford will get more or less than 6.5 points, you can bet on that. Other featured players this week include Sterling, Haaland, and Salah. There are also head-to-head markets where you can bet on who you think will get the most points this week. The head-to-head markets feature Arsenal pair Saka and Martinelli, and Man United pair Fernandes and Rashford. Smarkets FPL markets are unique and allows you to win while playing FPL. And if you're confident in your FPL skills, why not give it a go? It's quick and easy to register. Although we know not everybody gambles, which is something we take very seriously, which is why on our website we have a filter that you can turn on which allows you to opt out of the gambling ads. For those who do, enjoy it responsibly and safely. There's more info about it in the description, and of course you have to be 18 or over to play, and we encourage everybody to gamble responsibly and to be gambleaware.org. When the fun stops, stop. But speaking of fun, Sam, we've got all sorts of good stuff today. We've had all the kind of things that fantasy managers find fun, which of course is some team news. There's some big team news things today. I mean, you especially, even in your own team, have been waiting for the man himself, Mr. Postecoglou, to give you the updates on the man Maddison. So how are you feeling with the update that came out there? And then we'll jump into some more specific roundups.
Yep, delighted about that one. That was the one I was waiting on because I missed a couple of price rises this week in the hope of getting some firm news on Maddison, because if Maddison was fit and available, I wanted to keep him, especially with the fixtures that Spurs have coming up in the next 3. So was really pleased to see Ange come out and say, yeah, Maddison fully trained and is available and should therefore start the game. So that's great news. That meant I could then lock in my transfers, which I've done, and I'll talk you through them later.
Well, I think the thing that's really fiddly and fidgety on this one is the fact that there is this fact that he's almost given a double answer here. Those of us who are team news purists will look at this and be like, we'll see how he holds up, which traditionally means yellow flag at the moment he's available. And I think that what that has meant is that he does still have a flag on the app. So I suppose, there's a little bit of clearing up here to do. I mean, do you think that he's going to start? I suppose he could maybe get placed in. Some people might see that and think, substitute appearance only. Some people might say, he's going to start. I mean, do you have an inkling which way it's going to go, just to help people who look at that flag and wonder what it specifically means?
I think he's so important to the way that Spurs play, particularly the system under Postecoglou, like the way that we like to go forward. Maddison is the focal point of all of that. So if he's fit and available, I think he'll want to start with him. We do have players like the Celso who he could bring off the bench to replace Maddison. So it wouldn't surprise me to see him maybe get 30 minutes, maybe get 60 minutes in the game against Bournemouth, and then maybe see the Celso come on for the final 30, or he could change it up by moving some players around in order to kind of give Maddison that bit of extra time if he needs it. But my view is it seemed very innocuous. I mean, he was totally fine at the end of the game against Manchester United. He was running around the pitch celebrating that result and seemed fine. And he's been totally fine on his stories on social media this week, because I have been stalking him. And he's been totally fine. Obviously, he missed training the other day, but was back in full training then for today's session. So I do think he'll start him. I think it was very much precautionary what we saw with the boot on Saturday after the game. I think actually missing training was similar yesterday.
The boot in many ways is not as a scary thing to see as it used to be. I mean, there was a time, for example, when if you saw a player sat on the bench with a bit of ice on them, you were kind of a bit itchy about it. But nowadays, the way that they help players recover from all sorts of things, it's sometimes precautionary. I mean, it's well known that an ice pack to a muscle is just going to help it all that recovery just happen all that quicker, because muscle recovery has to happen for these guys every game, because the strain they put on their bodies is Herculean at times. So I suppose it's less about what we've seen them have on their bodies or what their bodies are in the sense of a boot, and more about that information, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we see regularly managers and the physios and the coaches kind of just being very careful with these assets, with these players, because they don't want to risk any more injury than they've already got. So any doubt that there is, they'll strap them up, they'll put them in a boot, they'll strap ice to them. That doesn't often mean that they're really seriously injured. It's just something that they do as a bit of a precaution until they're able to either scan them or have a proper look at the injury if there is one. I think with Maddison, it was more of an impact thing than anything else. So yeah, I think that he will start tomorrow. There is obviously a risk, but for me, even if he comes on for half an hour in that game against Bournemouth, I would still prefer him as part of my starting 11 for 30 minutes than I would some of my bench players.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, he can do a lot of damage in that time. But you've mentioned benches, which is a good opportunity for us to talk about another update we've had today, which is less about injuries and more about how integral a certain individual is to a different North London team, and that is Gabriel. And I can, of course, tie this in perfectly with Spencer FC, who almost read the script and has written in to say, will Gabriel start? And so what we've got, well, we can actually answer that twice. Mikel Arteta confirmed that Gabriel Jesus is ready to go, but only said we'll see when asked if he would start. But of course, Spencer has clarified he is talking about the other Gabriel, as opposed to the other Gabriel, because there's far too many of them at Arsenal.
So many of them.
It's a very religious place up there. They like naming all their players after angels. But so he's a really important player for us. That's what Arteta's told us about Gabriel, the centre-back. And here we are, once again, it's a Friday, and I'm asking my Deadline Stream guest what to do with Gabriel. So I can't actually remember off the top of my head, Sam, sorry. If you do have him, had him, ever intended to own him, or perhaps you're shaking your head, so put yourself in a parallel universe where you do own him.
Yeah, no, I was firmly in the Salah camp all the way through pre-season. I never had Gabriel in any of my drafts. But I think, so up until podding with Julian Aron on Thursday, I was very much in the camp that I think Gabriel will start this week, because obviously with Timber being out and then the suspension for Tomiyasu, I'm expecting to see Gabriel on that starting team sheet for the weekend against Fulham. Especially because I actually thought he did well when he came on in the last couple of games, particularly in game week 2 when he came on against Palace. I thought he looked good. So I was expecting him to start. Jules put a cat amongst the pigeons by saying that he doesn't think that he'll start him. He thinks that he'll start Zinchenko and use the inverting players that we've been seeing from Arteta so far. So that's put a little bit of doubt in my mind. But the more I look at Arsenal, the more I listen to what Arteta's saying, I think if he's ever going to start Gabriel, it's going to be this weekend. This is his opportunity, I think. Now, longer term, I think you've still got a bit of a problem, because once Tomiyasu comes back from suspension, which is going to happen in game week 4, you probably still got something you need to deal with when it comes to Gabriel. But for game week 3, I think he'll start against Fulham. I'll be surprised if he doesn't start him against Fulham, given the injuries and suspensions that they have going on there.
It feels like the time to do it, and I suppose he's less of a risk in people's teams this week than he was last week. And what I've just stuck up on the screen, of course, is the team news page, which if you haven't already used that before, do head there every Friday or just every day of the week, just to see how much Neil and Tom update this, because it's an incredible body of work. They analyse so much about all the different teams in the Premier League, different selection patterns and things like that, and of course have a very good line in on a lot of these injuries, and they are also predicting the same. They're predicting a back four of Zinchenko, Gabriel, Saliba and White. Of course, mentioning the different options that you've mentioned there, Sam. So I suppose that well, Neil and Tom are very, very good, and I don't actually say this as a criticism, of offering some caveats and some get-out-of-jail-free clauses in their team news predictions, where they've said that he could go the other way with Gabriel, because, of course, Ben White can play at centre-back as well. So I don't know. I think it's all about probabilities, isn't it? It's like there is still that probability that he could not play, but it's probably just numerically a smaller percentage than last week, and maybe it's also an easier fixture, I might argue, as well. So I would be more tempted to start him if my bench was on fire.
Yeah, I think if I had Gabriel this week, I'd start him. I would be very surprised if he doesn't start. And in this game against a Fulham side that, one, aren't keeping clean sheets, and two, haven't, they've got some attacking issues. They're not scoring that many goals at the moment. I would be surprised if we don't see at least a 6-pointer for Gabriel and for the Arsenal defence this week. So I would take a punt and start Gabriel if I had him. I wouldn't be prioritising selling him this week. Maybe you might need to next week, but not this week.
Well, I tell you what, I'm going to take your advice into my team in a minute, because that is actually exactly what I had been thinking I might do, is sell Gabriel and bench who I sell Gabriel for. So I've got a lot of dilemmas, and I'm hoping you can help me, Sam, because I hear you're quite good at FPL, so that'll be useful. So let's move on to other updates. I suppose the biggest one to come out of Villa is Martinez. A bit of an assessment needed. There's a couple of people still invested in the Villa defence. I am one of them, so I promise I'm not doing it selfishly. But any thoughts there? Would that put you off Villa defence? I know you're probably not invested in them, but to those out there who are, Martinez being a doubt, does that worry you?
Does a little bit, yeah, because I think, they've already lost Mings, who's a focal point in that defence. And in terms of the defences, what you really want is really good leaders in there. And if you lose Martinez as well as having lost Mings, you lose a couple of big voices that kind of dominate that defence and make them more attractive to us as FPL managers. I don't think it hugely weakens the defence in terms of, making the clean sheet less likely. I just think that you lose that kind of command maybe if you don't have Martinez. It'll annoy the few owners that have him, but I don't think it's a massive issue if you've got the likes of Cash or somebody like that across that Villa defence.
Yeah, I'm not that worried. I'm going to start Cash, I think, personally, because I just think the fixture's quite nice. Let's talk about something that's a little bit more pressing for people. It's Brighton this time. João Pedro is being sold by a lot of people, but the big news, of course, if you've not already caught it, serious knee injury to Julio Enciso in training, and so he's going to be out for a long time. He is obviously a positional rival for Pedro. We know for an absolute cast iron fact, to some extent, that Ferguson is going to start because De Zerbi has told us he has. Now, I have come across managers in the past who've said, I'm going to start this guy, or I'm not going to start this guy, and then they play, and then they score, and it's all very underhanded. But so it's worth clarifying that. But those people that still have Pedro, what would you be doing with him today?
I still have Pedro.
Okay.
Yeah, he's still in my team. So when the Enciso, at the beginning of the week, I was like, well, maybe I should sell him. Then the Enciso news broke and I was like, maybe I should keep him. And then the Ferguson comment has thrown me again, because I think he'll come, if he doesn't start him, which if he's going to start Ferguson, I think there's a good chance he doesn't start Pedro. But I do think there's a equally good chance that Pedro comes off the bench and gets 40, 30 minutes, something like that. And now last week that didn't go well because obviously picked up the booking and got no points. But I do think with the way that Pedro attacks and the kind of quality player that he is, and the fact that if he's on the pitch, we would expect him to take any penalties that Brighton get, that would make him still an attractive option. And I do think at his price point, he's still worth owning, because he will bring points regardless of whether he starts or not, is my view. Having said all of that, in my team currently, he's on the bench. He's my first sub, because I look at the way that the rest of my team is set up now, with the midfield five who I want to start all of, and then with two up top who I want to start. It's almost impossible to get João Pedro into the starting 11.
Yeah, it's tricky, especially with that slight doubt. I mean, everybody's doing lots of different things. It's one of the talking points of the week. We've had Ivan Skelly, there are no parking spots, which, by the way, is a great name, says that he's holding João Pedro, maybe because he hasn't got anywhere to park him. Then we've got a discover other people just asking what they should do. So Callum's asking, do I start Diaby or Pedro, for example? My heart says Diaby, my head says Pedro for the penalties. So
that's my actual dilemma, that is, because I've got those two. And I think that Diaby, he's going to start the game. He's going to be involved in their attacking play. I don't know how Diaby didn't get an attacking return last week. It just wasn't his week. Whereas I think with Pedro, there's a good chance he doesn't start the game if he's starting Ferguson. So if he's going to start Ferguson up top, there's a good chance, therefore, that Pedro doesn't start, comes on for 30 minutes. So it's a question of, do I want Diaby for 90, 80, Pedro for 30? I'm going to start Diaby.
Yeah, I would do the same. I mean, I'm a bit mean when I get these questions, because I currently am starting both of those players. And I usually, when people ask these, I go, you start both. And if you can't start both, sell one so your team is better balanced, so you don't have to bench someone who's at least 5.5 million and an attacker. So that's my wider message to people. Don't bring me those concerns. Sort your team out. But if I had to pick one of those two, I would go Diaby as well. Minutes are just much higher. And let's bring in the Scout team prediction, because it did have Pedro in at one point, I think, and this has made me nervous. Now, Pedro doesn't have to play centre forward. It's worth people sort of remembering this, because he can play number 10. And having played in Gameweek 39, I can absolutely tell you that when a centre forward plays number 10, it is an absolute nightmare to defend against. Because you have no idea where he's going to pop up and when he's going to break into the box. So it is effective, and we have seen that already with Pedro in Gameweek 1. So he can play there. But Neil and Tom have gone with the prediction for Brighton that involves March and Matoma as the wingers, Ferguson up front, because obviously we have to go what De Zerbi said, and Lallana as the number 10. Almost a forgotten man in many ways, and I sometimes confuse him with Ryan Mason because they look very similar and are basically the same age. And part of me assumed Adam Lallana was on the coaching staff at Brighton, but no, he's still a player and he can play number 10. So I suppose there's that to think about as well.
Yeah, but I also think that Adam Lallana is so injury prone,
Well, that's true.
and so rarely able to play a whole match that makes me more inclined to think that Pedro will start on the bench. Lallana starts. The Lallana comes off at like 60 minutes, and Pedro comes on at that point, and then you might get Pedro in that number 10. Or you might see Ferguson going off in a change of formation altogether. So I think there's enough doubt about the Pedro start which you just don't have with Diaby. We know Diaby is going to get the start. So if it comes down to a choice between those two, I think you start the one that you know is most likely to start.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's got to be the way to go for people. You've got to go with what you know and deal with the controllables in all of this is the things you know. And obviously, yeah, as you say, you know a more likely chance of start for him. Let's move to another team where there's always... who's going to start? I have no idea. Let's talk about Man City. Bernardo Silva has trained as normal and should be fit for Sunday. So does this make you nervous about Foden? He's probably and I suppose Alvarez as well. What was he thinking with those situations? Lots of people in the chat. I'll see if I can pick out a couple of questions. Philip says, do I transfer Foden in for Salah, for example? I've seen a couple of other people just talking about bringing in Foden. So the most up-to-date situation is Bernardo Silva is back. Does that make you nervous about Foden?
I mean, everything makes me nervous about Foden. Having just bought Foden in, I think Foden and Alvarez have been the standout picks from Man City in the opening couple of weeks. They've looked, well, both of them excellent, and I don't think that necessarily changes with Bernardo Silva being available straight away. So yes, there may be some minutes taken away here and there, but at the end of the day, they've got such nice fixtures that I just wanted another way into Manchester City. And I thought quite long and hard about, do I go for Foden or do I go for Alvarez? And it was a tough decision to work out which way to do it, particularly with the new signings that Man City are making at the moment. But right now, it feels like Foden is the right one to invest in. I think with the way that he's playing, his positioning on the pitch, how important he's been in that City attack, I just don't see Pep not playing him against Sheffield United this weekend.
Yeah, he certainly has been heavily involved. Looks good. Could have got even more points in game week 2, for example. He's created 9 chances so far, which is among some of the most. It puts him amongst some of the most persistent creators so far in the first 2 games. I suppose the other thing, of course, is that Pep doesn't rotate too much at the start of a season when European football hasn't really set in yet. So I think in a way you can be almost more sure of these Man City guys than you can about Pedro for this week.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think Foden, do I think that I'll own Foden for the next 37 game weeks, 36 game weeks? No, unlikely. Do I think that I will own him now and maybe change it when I wildcard? Maybe, yeah, because by that point, transfer window will be closed. We'll have a bit more understanding about how City are using players around the Champions League. Because, in the past, we've seen with players like Mahrez that, there's certain games and certain competitions that Pep likes to play certain players in. By that point, we'll have much greater understanding, and there are plenty of other options that we can move to as well in other teams. Because in order for me to upgrade my front line, and we'll talk about my team in more detail, I needed to free up some money, and Foden was the perfect pick at that point. But I've now got loads of money sitting in my bank, so I'll be able to use that to go wherever I want to in reality. So I really just need Foden for a couple of weeks while I'm kind of finding my feet with how I want to invest in Man City. But they've got fantastic fixtures. They are the champions. And just having Haaland, it's basically it's like not having any City at all is how I was finding it. So now's the point where I have to take a chance. And it was either, do I take a chance with Alvarez? Do I take a chance with Foden? And my gut feeling was go for Foden. So that's what I did.
Kind of sounds like you're on a sort of like a posh person's gap here. You're loaded with cash and you're here for a good time, not a long time.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You'll find me just, throwing cash around and not Matty cash, by the way, the FPL cash. Won't throw Matt cash around. Don't worry. For you owners, he won't get injured. But yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? With Manchester City, I knew going into game week 1 that just having Haaland wasn't really where I wanted to be. But I didn't know who was going to. I know that we saw some team news and stuff early on with Man City in game week 1, but I didn't trust the news to be what we would see in game week 2 as well. But actually, having watched game week 1 and game week 2, I now feel a little bit more secure in terms of how City are playing this season. And that felt like the right moment ahead of this game against Sheffield United to go, okay, I need another City player alongside Haaland. And yes, I could go for a defender, but actually what I really want to do is invest a little bit more in the attack.
One last question on City, because it is on the quote, is of course Pep Guardiola is not going to be available. He is red flagged himself, but he can still virtually contribute, quite literally. The contact is continuous, says his number 2, who sounds a little bit like, oh, the contact is continuous. He won't leave him alone. Telephone, video call, everything. A couple of questions in the chat asking, do we think that Pep not actually being on the touchline in any way is a concern? Which is not something we're used to, I suppose, because he can't impose himself. Sometimes these City players might look to the touchline, see him gesticulating like an absolute madman, and work at that a little bit harder. Whether or not they can put that on the big screen at Bramwell Lane, I don't know. Him in his bedroom,
just a video of Pep sitting at home on his sofa shouting,
abusing the referee. Going up to the official and type, do you remember that one where he was like 2 times, two.
Yeah,
like,
watching the VAR screen appearing in the background and getting irate. No, I don't think it makes a difference. I mean, we've seen it before, haven't we? With managers that get sent to the stands that aren't actually allowed to be part of that communication. Pep is allowed to do that. I mean, as a Spurs fan last season, we saw it quite a bit with when Conte was out with his, having had an operation and stuff. And it didn't really make much difference. In fact, if anything, Spurs were actually better when Conte wasn't on the bench.
And even now, he's not on the bench now, and you're better.
And we're much better, exactly. Yeah, but I think with Pep, he will be involved in those conversations. The players will know that he is involved in the situations as they come, and that he will be feeding into the decisions that are being made on the bench. I don't think it will make a massive difference. I think if it did make a massive difference, then Pep would have maybe made his decisions slightly differently. I just don't think that it will have a massive impact on Man City. I think he'll still be Pep's decisions that are played out on the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, the professionalism in those players is just ridiculous. They are all just absolute terminators. They're all without wanting to upset any Liverpool fans out there. Like, they're the ones who are the mentality monsters. They almost don't need Pep. I mean, they do, of course, need Pep, but they don't need him there every second to be at their best, and they'll know he's watching. So yeah, it should be fine. In terms of people who look like Pep, but are also in Manchester, people keep referring to Ten Hag as like the Pep you got from Wish, and of course Højlund as well. It's a good joke, but anyway,
maybe they'll get a cardboard cutout of him, just stand him in the technical area. That might work.
Yeah, a picture of Pep or a picture of Ten Hag. I don't know which one would be more imposing, but we'll move over to the other side of Manchester, as I said, to talk about Luke Shaw, who all of a sudden he's now in. Defenders have been causing so many headaches at the start of the season. Number of people in the chat. I'll see if I can pull a few people out in a minute for some specific alternatives to Luke Shaw. But here we go. Not another one. Another defender. Yeah, bites the dust.
You could easily have started with game week 1, couldn't you? With Gabriel, John Stones, and Luke Shaw as your back 3. Easily, you could have. And if you did, that's an absolute disaster. I think with Luke Shaw, though, although it's really frustrating ahead of a game against Nottingham Forest at home, where you would have expected a clean sheet, and he's really attacking, so you might have seen some, attacking returns there. Realistically, he should have got an attacking return against Spurs. He was being very creative. I think with Luke Shaw, you've got multiple options. If you don't have a Chelsea defender, that would be my first priority. I'd look at one of them. If you can get to Chilwell, then you go there. If you can't, then you've got Colwill and you've got Gusto. Both of them look nice, cheap options that you can invest in the Chelsea defence with. So that would be my first point of call. After that, I'd look at Manchester City with maybe a Kanji, or with Walker, or with Guardiola. One of those 3, I think you would probably look to invest in next. You will it's DS as well. There's plenty of rotation potential. That's the only concern I would have. So if you are going to go for a City defender, because so far it's only been Akanji and Walker that have started both of the first two fixtures, you got to be a bit wary of that and a bit mindful, and you probably need a bench just to be certain that your Man City defender isn't going to cause you any headaches.
Yeah.
So those are the two that I prioritize. If you don't have Salah and you don't, you're not invested there, then he's an option. The other option is that you just go a little bit rogue for the next 3 weeks. Like Spurs have got really nice fixtures for the next 3. You could go uber cheap and go with Udogie instead, free up a load of budget that you can spend elsewhere. He has been looking really good in the last couple of weeks. Was impressed with him in game week 2 against Manchester United. So he could be an option as well. But yeah, I think those are the kind of the key options. I think you can go cheap with Augusto or Udogie. You can stick around the same price point with somebody like Salah or one of the Manchester City defenders. The other shout out I would make is just Rico Henry, because if you haven't got him, he might make a nice pick as well for Brentford.
Yeah, Brentford looked good defensively at the end of last year, start of this season as well. They're looking nice. Some good options there, as you say. I think City is the one I don't currently have investment in. I'm a bit nervous about, but how to do it is a challenge, but not quite so much of a challenge as what it's like for Tic Tac Dave 86 right now, who started the season with Gabriel, Shaw, Stones, and Bulldog. No.
Wow. Oh. So what, you just probably left with Kabore?
Yeah, exactly. It's just got nobody left. It's just, yeah. Well, it's like that that scene out of Pulp Fiction where John Travolta was in the living room. Like, there's just nobody left.
World is exploding. It's like that scene, and it's like that scene from Guardians of the Galaxy where he's just listening to the music and everything's kicking off around him, but in his head he's calm, but it's all going mental off around him.
We would encourage you, if you've got those defenders, just to stick on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 or 2. The number 3 was a good film, but I think the soundtrack wasn't quite as good as the first two. If you need something real classic, listen to those first 2 soundtracks, and that should soothe your pain, I would suggest. But man, what a way to start the season. That is very, very painful. In terms of some of those options, then, someone has asked us a question about which one they feel is the best in terms of their specific situation. So Jake Smith would like to know Cash, Gabriel, or Diaz. He's not actually specifically talking about selling Shaw, but I'm imagining he probably is if he's asking about those 3. So if you had to rank those 3, how would you rank them? So that's
I wouldn't go for Gabriel. I'd go Salah over him. Yep. I think if you want to go Arsenal, go Salah. The other 2, who are they? Diaz and who?
Diaz and Cash.
I think Diaz probably would be. So Salah would be my first. Salah would be my first choice, not Gabriel. If you want Gabriel, I'd put him third choice. Diaz probably second, and then Cash in third, just because of the missing Mings, and if you miss Martinez as well factor. I think for this week, I would expect Diaz to start and get a clean sheet, so I'd probably put him next after an Arsenal defender.
Nice. It would appear that he's already taken your advice before you gave it, because basically he's actually already sold Shaw for Diaz, apparently. He's just clarifying with us now. And my guess is he's wondering which of them to start, but I'm guessing it kind of sounds like Diaz is the way to go, to be honest. So we will go with that. So that brings us to the end of our little team news roundup. So I'll just stick up on the screen sort of the wider and broader sort of, injury situation across the league. We got Palhinha, Joelinton, Alexander-Arnold, Gabriel Jesus, Bernardo Silva, Zaniolo, and Maddison in the fit to play, but I suppose Maddison probably has the S, the O, and the N of his name just touching the edge of questionable because of what we've talked about earlier on. Go back and have a listen to that if you've got any Maddison questions. We've got Breuer, Willian, Canate, and Martinez under questionable. We've got Højlund as a major doubt. And in terms of players that are out, if you've got any of these guys, then do something about it. Calvert-Lewin, Iwobi, Harrison, Chukwuemeka at Chelsea, Tim Ream from Fulham, which of course they're missing their key defender there, Fulham, so that's good for Arsenal. Willock, Mudryk, Mount, Shaw, Ferguson of Crystal Palace, who just is never fit, and Ciso. So that could mean extra minutes for Pedro, but we can't guarantee it. We have to say that. Ben Mee, and then the new West Ham defender, Mavropanos, is not ready yet. He's not injured, he's just not fit. So yeah, that's the roundup of injuries of people who didn't have time for team news earlier on. So let's distill all of that information into, Sam, how you got on in game week 2, which I've got up on the screen right now, which you don't have to spend too much time on because really everyone wants to see about game week 3. But talk to us about what this week you've been dealing with and any changes you've made, how you're looking going into game week 3.
Yeah, so game week 2 was pretty disastrous for me, to be honest. So at the end of game week 1, I was at 15k, and I was like, oh, hello, this is a novel start to the season. Don't normally start that well, actually. And then game week 2 kind of hit me. Well, I was actually in a theme park, and it hit me as a bit of a roller coaster, to be honest. It just
Very
wasn't the
good.
game week that I know. That was quite funny for me, actually, to be fair. I Yeah, it wasn't the game week I was expecting. I think that there were, like, I was expecting more returns from people like Chilwell, just didn't come. Like, really, if it wasn't for Estupinian and Saliba and the decision to captain Salah over Haaland, it would have been an unmitigated disaster because everybody else doing badly. But then I watched these fixtures and was like, I don't know how I didn't get a return out of Diaby. Genuinely, I don't. I don't know how there wasn't a return for Bruno Fernandes in that game. Genuinely, I have no idea. Saka not taking the penalty infuriated me. João Pedro coming off the bench for a 1-pointer. He actually could easily have got points coming off the bench in that game because he was really involved and really attacking when he did. On another day, this team last week gets 80 points, and I've had another stormer, but it just didn't come off last week. So going into this week, I looked at my team with 2 free transfers and was like, there's nobody I really dislike in there, with the exception of one man, and that's Bruno Fernandes, because I've for 2 weeks now, I've been infuriated by him. In game week 1, I was infuriated because he just didn't look very good. He wasn't playing in a position that I wanted him to be in. Manchester United looked really off fit against Wolves, and quite frankly, Wolves should have got something out of that game. Obviously, last Saturday night, I watched the game intently because it was my boys, and I was more impressed by Bruno in terms of better positioning, better involvement, was creative. He was top for XG underachievers across game week 2, so should have done better than he did. But I have some concerns still going into this one. The major concern is that they don't have a number 9, and Rashford in the number 9 just doesn't work. He needs to be out wide. That will improve everything about them. With Højlund not available, it seems, and with Martial, I have major concerns about Martial playing up there as well, to be honest. I don't know that I'm feeling the love with Bruno. However, the underlying stats are there and the fixture is there, and it's a home tie. And he did do really well against Nottingham Forest in their last meeting back in April. He got a goal and an assist in that one. So I'm going to give Bruno one more week and see what comes of him. If he doesn't return against Nottingham Forest, though, it will be the easiest sell I've ever made going into game week 4.
Yeah, because game week 4 is not a nice fixture for United. This is sort of last chance saloon for them in many ways. I've put your game week 3 bus team, or it's not really a bus team anymore because I think you've made your transfers now. Having compared them, have you sold Salah for Foden and upgraded Mubama to Vissa? Is that what you've done?
That's exactly what I've done. Yeah, so I've used my 2 free transfers. Now, selling Salah it was sort of always on the radar for game week 3 anyway, because I really wanted to have Salah for game week 2 to captain him. Always in the back of my mind, this was a point where I might sell Salah because the fixtures aren't great for Liverpool in the next couple. Obviously, it's Newcastle this time, and Newcastle defensively are good. Don't see Liverpool getting a haul against them, particularly when they've got to travel. And then Aston Villa, and there's a Spurs game coming up as well. Like, I was just looking at it kind of going, maybe if there's going to come a point where you can sell Salah. And then over the last 2 weeks, I've been really carefully looking at Liverpool because obviously the other side of my household is very much into watching Liverpool. And I've been really impressed by both Jota and Luis Diaz. Far more impressed by both of them than I have been with Salah in the opening fixtures. And when you think about the price difference there between those assets, it's quite significant. So in my head, selling Salah to free up the budget that enabled me to get Mubama, who was just there as a nothing bench option, and allow me to get Wissa in, was a bit of a no-brainer because I really wanted to invest in Brentford. I didn't have any Brentford players, and that was difficult. It was been very difficult the last couple of weeks not having a Brentford attacker. And I was torn on the Mbeumo versus Wissa debate. I could have just done Salah to Mbeumo and then maybe got Alvarez up top instead. That was one way that I looked at going, but I just really like Wissa. I like what he's doing. I like the underlying stats. I like his positioning on the pitch. Yes, Mbeumo's got great underlying stats as well. And I'm not ruling out having him as well as Wissa going into game week 4, by the way, because I think that there is potential that I might want to sell Bruno next week and then I could go there, or I could move for somebody else instead. But those were the two transfers that had kind of been in the back of my mind. I held off until today because I wanted to wait for that Maddison news. Because if Maddison was out for the next couple of weeks, then I would have likely sold Maddison and gone in Mbeumo instead. But these were the two transfers I had in mind. I've now got I don't know even how many million in the bank, but it's nice. It looks quite nice now because now I can go anywhere with my team, which does feel like a nice position to be in.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the reasons why I'm glad that I had Salah at the start of the season as well, because if it was going to work, it was going to be great because not everybody's got him this time around, and if it didn't work, it was fine because you have the flexibility to fix your team if you need to. So, yeah, I mean, that team, I like the look of it, to be honest, and the fact that you can even bring yourself to bench Pedro, I think is very much a luxury move this week for a lot of people. There'll be some people that have bigger problems to solve potentially, and then feel like they have to start Pedro and hope for the best, whereas you don't really have to worry about that. So it looks like it's in a pretty good place, if I'm honest.
The only thing that I think is missing from this team is a Chelsea attacker. But I don't know, and I said this on the FPL pod this week and on the fantasy show this morning, I don't know who my preferred Chelsea attacker is. He's posting good underlying stats, but I don't think he's clicked yet in the Premier League. Now, he might do that tonight against Luton, but he might not. It might take him. We've seen this in the past with players that come into the Premier League, they make decent starts in terms of underlying stats, but they just don't quite get going. I want to wait and see on Jackson. I want to watch what happens tonight because my gut tells me to get Sterling, and that is a rogue gut feeling.
Yeah, you okay?
I don't know. I have questioned my own mental state over the last couple of days because the more I think about having Raheem Sterling in my team, the more I like it, which worries me a lot. So that's why I decided, right, I'm not going Chelsea. I'm going to go for Brentford because I know where I am with Brentford. I know where I am with Wissa. And I know where I am with Man City. With Chelsea, I don't know where I am. There's so many potential players that you could move to. So for me, I just felt that with the fixtures looking nice for a long time for Chelsea, I had the luxury of going, let's watch them against Luton, who, by the way, could play a low block and prevent Chelsea from getting too many attacking opportunities anyway. Well, they can try to. I'm going to just watch tonight and then make my decision as I move forward with Chelsea in terms of when one of them starts to stand up, because they're creating chances, but they're like Chelsea of last season still at the moment. They're not converting those chances yet. They will, but it's not happening yet. And when we know which one it's going to be that starts creating those chances and converting them, that's going to be the time to jump on Chelsea, in my view. Yeah,
I think I share that view, to be honest. I have thought about Jackson. We'll get to my team in a minute. I'm going to be even more conservative. I may even roll an additional I may roll again. But there are stats to back up what you're saying there, if the people are more interested in the stats over the eye test, perhaps, in that Jackson is a very persistent shooter so far. He's had 6 shots in the box, which puts him in the top 5 in the Premier League. He's had 3 big chances as well, which is joint second most. But the crucial thing here is the conversion is not very good. So just 2 shots on target. There's about 15 to 20 players that have managed more shots on target than him. So he's performing very well in the sense that he's getting opportunities. They're in the right place. They're of a high quality, but he's not converting them yet, which obviously, of course, means his goal conversion rate is 0%. He would not be the first Chelsea striker to come to the Premier League from a different division, have lots of opportunities and not actually put them in the goal. So the numbers completely back up your concerns and the narrative that at this point in time we don't exactly know that Jackson can actually finish his dinner. So I think that is very much that's impacted what I've been thinking about Chelsea as well. So
yeah, I'm fully in that camp at the minute. I think I'm hoping that by the end of the night tonight we'll have a better and clearer view on Chelsea and we will know which way is the right way to go. But I do think there is a world where Chelsea, Luton play a low block, they prevent them from getting too many opportunities, and we don't learn as much as I want to learn about Chelsea in this game this evening. So I'm really fascinated. I know how brilliant a manager Poch is and how brilliant players can develop under him from his time at Spurs. And I am very keen to get on board with Poch's Chelsea when it comes to FPL. But I just think there's enough uncertainty and there's enough doubt in the clinicalness of Jackson that makes me kind of go, let's just take a breath. Let's see how they are, and then let's look to invest later, because the fixtures remain good. So it's not like you're investing for 1 week and then the fixtures massively turn for the worst. You've got the time to give yourself that breathing space, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And, some other comparisons actually in the chat. FPL Marshall says he could be this year's Darwin, for example. We don't, because he started last season with lots of shots, had incredible XG, but couldn't put the chances away. So, that entirely could happen. We've had a super chat, and of course, just to remind people, this is a great way, firstly, to support the channel. So thank you very much to FPL El Hadari, but also the best way to definitely get the answer to your question on the stream, because we have so many questions coming in. We do our best to get to as many of the talking points as possible, but if you want specific answers for your team and you want a guaranteed answer, super chat's the way to go. So thank you very much, FPL El Hadari, who says, I'm rolling. I want to bench one of the following 4 players. Who would you go with? And he's listed Estupiñán, Richarlison, Pedro, and Colwill as the 4. He's got to bench one of those so that he can roll. It's actually, I thought it was easy at first, but it's actually quite hard, I think. So Estupiñán, Richarlison, Pedro,
you can't bench Estupiñán, is my view. I think that he's the most likely to haul out of that lot. So I don't think he's an option. Colwill, I think you want to play against Luton, because Luton's attack isn't great. I think there's a clean sheet in there for him. So it comes down to a choice between Richarlison and Pedro. Now, the difficulty I have with this is that Richarlison's going to start. Pedro may not. But I think Pedro is more likely to get an attacking return than Richarlison is. Ridiculously, I'd probably bench Richarlison of that lot.
Ooh.
And that's coming from me.
Hand in your Spurs membership card now.
I know. Goodness me, all the Spurs fans will be atting me later. I just think that we haven't seen the best of Richarlison yet. And I don't just mean this season, I mean generally at Spurs, we haven't seen the best of Richarlison yet. And we haven't seen the connection between Richarlison and Maddison yet. Maddison's forming these connections with most of the other Spurs players, but we're not quite seeing the link-up play and the understanding yet coming between those two. And I did think that will come, and I still think that will come. But with Maddison missing some training this week, they won't have been working on that development. And Maddison puts in some beautiful balls, but Richarlison doesn't always end up in the right places to see them or to receive them, or he doesn't always take them with confidence. Like we saw that in the game against Brentford. He had a couple which Maddison put through to him. And if he'd just hit it first time, they probably would have at least challenged Flecken in goal. But he didn't. He kind of took a touch and then went for it. And then by the time he was going for it, the defender had dealt with the situation. So my concern with Richarlison is that we could have another 2-pointer or a 3-pointer for a clean sheet on our hands with him. It's almost frustrating that the Spurs game at lunchtime tomorrow isn't the first game of the game week from this perspective.
That would be helpful, wouldn't it?
Yeah, because I also think that there is a chance that Son plays in a false nine with Manor Solomon playing in Son's position out wide. I always think that there's a chance that happens for Spurs. I don't think it will, particularly with the doubts over Maddison. I think he'll go for what we've been trying so far because it's looked good. I think, for me, we're not seeing Brazilian Richarlison yet. We're still seeing and I get a lot of hate from the Everton fans when I say this, but we're still seeing the Everton Richarlison, which is somebody who's got plenty of potential, but never quite hits the mark. Whereas for Brazil, he plays exactly in the position that he wants to, and he is not having to compromise his gameplay, and he's still having to compromise a little bit when he plays for Spurs. And we saw the frustration that came out of him when he got substituted at the weekend. And I actually thought the Spurs looked better once Richarlison had been subbed, which doesn't bode that well for him, I think. So of those 4, it's a choice between Pedro and Richarlison. And I probably bench Richarlison over Pedro.
Wow. Well, you heard it here first, guys. Spurs fans.
He's going to score this weekend, isn't he? He's not scored in the Premier League for us yet. So
it's crazy.
Well, he has, but
it
shouldn't really have been his goal. It should have come down as an own goal.
Was that the game where he finally got his first goal and then Liverpool immediately scored afterwards?
Yeah, that's right. It should have gone down as an own goal, really. I remember looking back at it afterwards and going, yeah, that shouldn't have been your goal.
Such a shame.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh,
it was
dear.
definitely a shame in my house as well.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Well, let's not dwell on that.
Let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on. Well, I'm going to selfishly move on to my team because if you thought other people's quandaries were challenging, I have a lot to think about this week. And if it makes life easier for you, Sam, I'm actually just going to send you my team on Slack so you can see it because I appreciate
cool.
that you can't necessarily always, just in case you didn't have YouTube open, you need live access to my team because I've got so many questions. Right. So game week 2 actually had a good one. 56 points. Captain Salah had Mbermo, so got the 16 from him. Stupinan, obviously. Bench Flecken cost me a few points, to be honest, because I started Turner, but Cash coming in was perfect. That's that rotation already in full effect because I probably would have preferred my Villa defender over my Arsenal defender that week anyway, so I benched Gabriel. So it went relatively well. Worth saying, I've seen a few people talk about points and positioning. There's actually only 1 point between me and Sam. She's got 139, I've got 138, and yet there's 46,423 places between us.
Oh, great maths.
Yeah, well, I do a lot of IQ training apps just for fun. So there we are. That's worked out perfectly on a stream. That's the gap between us, 1 point. So, at this stage of the season, anything can happen. So don't panic. Don't panic, because as I said, 1 point separates me and Sam by actually quite a vast margin of OR, but it only takes a booking here or an own goal there to perhaps flip that around. But that's where I am at the moment. But in terms of my team, I've got 2 free transfers, and I don't know what I want to do with it because, well, I'll list it for anyone who's just listening, perhaps maybe in the car or something. Flecken in goal, that's an easy comeback in for Turner. Cash, Stupin and Chilwell, I'm actually very happy with as a back 3 because Cash is going Burnley away and actually does look quite attacking. Stupin and Chilwell, no-brainers. Midfield of Mbermo, DRB and Saka are all no-brainers. Salah and Rashford are players that people are selling this week. But I've seen enough from Salah that I feel like maybe I'll get something here. But Rashford at home against Forest, I feel like if I'm going to give a United player 1 more week, you have to do it in this game. And did a little video on the channel. It's actually quite a short one, so people do still have time to check that out in the next 36 minutes in terms of the shot conceded map for Forest so far and the shots taken map for Rashford, and they do kind of link up. When he's in the central forward role, he actually ends up shifting to the right of the penalty spot to have his shots, which is actually an area where Forest have conceded more shots than any other part of the box so far. So I'm kind of thinking 1 more week, I think I'm going to be okay. Haaland and Pedro up front. Again, I think that Pedro could start, or he maybe comes on, looks as good as he did last week, and gets something. And so while I know that this team isn't necessarily optimised for game week 2, part of me just wants to make 1 transfer and then do more work with the 2 free transfers when we have more data involved and maybe when some fixture swings come. And so I know I don't have Foden, and I know that could leave me exposed, but I still think Rashford could get something. I still think Salah could get something. So what I'm weighing up here, Sam, and we're good to get your thoughts on effectively, is what is the value of a transfer? Because I think that Foden probably gets more points than Rashford this week, but is it worth spending a transfer? I don't want to use both. I want to spend maybe just 1, and then use the 2 free transfers either in game week 4 or game week 5. There's a massive Newcastle fixture swing in game week 6, for example. Would love to have 2 free transfers for that. If I could bank one of them now, that would be really useful. So it's the value of getting those extra points. Are they worth a transfer? Because transfers are precious, and that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, they are precious. I mean, your team's it's different to mine, but it's not dissimilar to mine in terms of the decision making that you've got to do for this week, because I feel exactly like you've just described with Salah. So I wasn't overly keen on the idea of selling Salah this week because I think in game week 1 and 2 he's actually looked fine, but that's my slight issue, is that he's looked fine and he's 12.5 million.
That's true.
And at 12.5 million, with a game against Newcastle, an away game against Newcastle, which I think, Liverpool are better at home than they are away. Newcastle, I think that's going to become a bit of a fortress for them this season, and I think they will go to lock Liverpool out and to score goals. They will think we can easily score against that defence, and they can. And I think that they will think that they are secure enough defensively that they can lock Liverpool out of that attacking lineup. I think it's going to be a really tough game for Liverpool. It doesn't mean that I don't think Salah's going to return. I just think the chances of Salah hauling are small because the way that Newcastle will play means I don't think that he's going to get more than a goal in that game. So if I'm saying that I think Salah's on for a 5 or a 6 pointer in game week 3, Do I think that the players that I could bring in replace of him could be on for more than that? So with players like, I mean, you've already got Mbeumo in there, so he's out of the equation for you. But with players like Foden, do I think that Foden could get more than 6 points this week? Absolutely. Do I think that Foden could outscore Salah in game week 4 rather, when we get there, when Liverpool have got a difficult fixture again? Yeah, I do. So if I think that Foden can outscore Salah for the next 2 weeks, I should bring Foden in, that was the position that I was in. Because I also think that by the time Liverpool's fixtures swing back again, and I might want to invest, I am utterly convinced that one of those two, either Jota or Luis Diaz, is going to be the one that we want to go for. And we'll know by that point. Over Salah, I think we will be able to go in cheaper. So that's why I made that decision. And that's why if I had your team, I'd make that move. I'd move Salah for Foden. Now, you don't have to use that money straight away. I think that's the other thing, is that it was, for me, I didn't have a Brentford player and I really wanted one. So it made sense for me to reinvest some of the Salah money into Issa. But I think for you could just do Salah to Foden and then have the money available, because then, like you say, the Newcastle fixture swing is one that's playing in the back of my mind too. I don't know how I'm going to want to invest there. Am I going to want to go Isak? I might do. So I've got the money to go from João Pedro up to Isak. Or I've got the money to take one of my defenders up to Trippier if I want to go there. Or if Harvey Barnes suddenly becomes an option, I could go there. Like, it puts you in a position where you've got the money and you've got the transfer available, so you can go anywhere.
You know what? You have massively taught me around on this. I was thinking I probably wasn't going to do it, but I think that may be the course of action I go with, and I feel like that even more so, like that's the way to go. Bearing in mind my other most likely plan until I spoke to you was to leave them both in and sell Gabriel for someone who I would then bench, because I felt like I was happy with my 11. And what I was looking at in there was maybe a Newcastle defender, because I'm happy with cash for the next few. Estupiñán seems like an auto start. Chilwell's got good fixtures and good form as well. I can bring Anderson in next week if I need to, because Palace have a good game at home against Wolves. And I felt like my Gabriel replacement wasn't needed until like game week 6. That's when Newcastle go away to Sheffield United. Probably what's going to have a bigger impact on my team is to put Salah into Foden and then deal with that Gabriel to Botman further down the line.
Yeah, because Gabriel could then become Trippier rather than Botman.
That's very true.
And so this is where my head went when I was trying to decide, because I think a lot of people, if you go on Twitter or social media, will go, people don't think Salah's a good option. But that's not how I'm feeling with this. I don't think that Salah is a bad pick by any stretch. I don't think that overnight I dislike the Salah pick by any stretch. What I like is the fact that by not having Salah, I have Foden, who I think is a better option for this week anyway, and I have the ability to move to anybody that I want to from this week, next week, when the Newcastle fixtures swing. And I think that is a position of power. Now, you can absolutely wait and do that next week. You absolutely could go Gabriel to a Botman, to a Udogie, to whoever you want, and free up some of that money. And then just wait on your 2 free transfers next week. But next week, is the situation going to be the same? Are you still going to be looking at Salah as your weaker point that you might want to sell? I mean, it might change because it could be Rashford, I suppose, that you might want to sell.
Yeah, I think Rashford will be. I think even Rashford, if he gets something, I think if he gets like an assist and a goal, it's just one return. I think that's like, cheers, mate, see you later. Because the fixtures just are not nice. Well, at least for game week 4 and 5 anyway. I think it's. They've got Brighton in game week 5, and then of course in game week 4, I've got my fixture ticker is all over the place at the moment because I'm like looking way into the future. Of course, it's away at Arsenal, so they are 2 really hard fixtures. I think that's an easy sell next week. I suppose I don't necessarily know who I would go for, but then that's fine because someone may emerge this week who is a pressing replacement for him. Well,
the other thing is you don't have a Spurs player in there at all for the 2 newly promoted teams that we've got in 4 and 5, so you could be looking at a Madison transfer at that point.
He's
maybe
been on my mind for a while.
Yeah. So that is a potential transfer that you could make, but then I think it's tough. It is definitely tough with your team. My view is that you have to chase upside as much as you can. And I look at Salah. I think he can return. I just don't think he'll haul. I think Foden might haul.
Yeah, I think
So
yeah. Because the thing is, what I try to find upside where I can, especially last season. I used to be a much more conservative manager, and then last season I just decided to go, what the hell? If I have a bad game week, it doesn't really matter because there's more important things in life. Now, it's not to do FPL down at all. It actually made me enjoy the game more because it meant that the lows, I didn't take them to heart as much as I used to before, and so that made me more like excited to chase upside. And so, bearing in mind, I saw the success with that. I feel like I should go with it. And actually, but I can kind of kill two birds with one stone. I want to be conservative. I want to only make one transfer. I want to make sure I've still got two for next week so that I can eventually leverage those two free transfers on loads of data, because that's when I prefer to make big changes. So I can actually do both. I can chase the upside with Foden and bank a transfer, which actually feels like galaxy brain. I like it, but it's your idea, so you're the one with the galaxy brain, Sam.
Yeah, I think sometimes in FPL it's very easy to go, I'm not doing that because I don't want to sell this player. But the way I always try and look at it is, if I do this, I might not want to sell that player, but could I improve something else? Does the rest of my team look better? Do I actually get a bench for a change rather than not having anybody? Because that was a massive issue last week. Because, of course, João Pedro did come on, all right, for 0 points, but at least he did come on. But I didn't have anyone else, really, because I had Baldock, who was injured, and Kabore, who wasn't playing. So it was kind of like, well, this is a bit of a disaster, actually. If Maddison, for any reason, wasn't fit and available, and this was the other way that I was looking at it, you have to kind of make sure that the team is, I take on board what you're saying about having not a lot of money on the bench, and I think you can get away with that this year with your Gustos and your Udogis, and even if you wanted a cheap midfielder, you could go with Pape Sarr. There are options in the cheaper bracket that you can have. I just think that you want to have those options, and at that point my team didn't have those options. So the fact that João Pedro is now my first sub makes me feel more comfortable with the way that my team is.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for sure. And I suppose I don't mind starting him. I'm on the flip side of that. I don't mind starting him because I feel like he might get something. And what I get in return for that is an extra transfer next week, which I think long term is going to benefit it. So I think I'm pretty decided. I think I'm going to sell Salah and get Foden. And you've been more helpful than chat, Sam, because I put to them a poll. Should I sell Salah? 50% said yes. 50% said no. So cheers, guys. It was
so helpful.
It was looking a little bit Brexit at one point because it was 52-40. It was 52-48, and I was don't want to go near those numbers again. They're cursed. I feel like all important polls always end up being that way around. But it was 50-50. So I think I'm going to do it in just a moment. What I'm going to do now is we obviously have had some teams come through to be rated, and so I'm going to stick those on the screen right now. And we're gonna whittle through those, and hopefully Sam can see them if she has YouTube open.
I can see them.
Blast them all through Slack. So thank you very much for bearing with that. So we'll start with Joe Thurgood's team: Onana, Chilwell, Stupinan, Saliba, Rashford, Bruno, Saka, Martinelli, Haaland, Watkins, Alvarez is the starting 11. Udogie, Anderson, Kabore on the bench with Turner. So you give us your thoughts on that, Sam, whilst I lock that Salah transfer out into Foden before the site crashes. So I'm going to just briefly hand over to you.
I really like that team. I think that team's really nice. I'm assuming that transfers already been made on this one. It's set up really nicely. Udogie, I think it's a shame that you can't get him into that starting 11, but I look at it and I think there's nobody else that realistically I'd bench for him. I think next week you might have some interesting decisions to make with your midfield four all playing against each other. But at that point, I think, you can make that decision based upon what we see from Manchester United this weekend. I think that there is a good chance that Martinelli's game massively improves with the news that Gabriel Jesus is available. If they play Jesus, then I think we could see Martinelli back to the Martinelli that we had last year. So Saka and Martinelli, I think you probably keep, but we'll see how they perform this weekend against Fulham. Rashford and Bruno, I think they might be the ones you go out with next week. And then obviously you can promote Udogie into your starting 11 for the games against the two newly promoted clubs in 4 and 5. So yeah, I like that team. That looks really nice. There's nothing I'd change ahead of this week. I think you go with it as there are so many nice home fixtures in there as well, isn't there? Like all of the defence, including the goalie, and then all of the midfield all at home. That's ideal.
Yeah, I really like it. And just sorry, with that one to take us back to Salah, the vote is continuing and it is now 52-48 again. So thanks, guys. Thanks
And
so
they're doing
much
it
for that.
deliberately now.
They probably are. They probably all sat there campaigning. Guys, how can we make it 50-48? I have now sold him. I have now done Foden. So that is locked. My team is sorted. So thank you, Sam. And thank you also for rating Joe's team as well. I agree with you. I think it's a good team. It ticks all the boxes. You know, in many ways, some might argue that it is too heavily invested in United and Arsenal at the expense of, say, having a Villa attacker or a City one. But it doesn't matter because he's constructed it in such a way that he's also got Alvarez, he's got Watkins as well. For this week, very good. But yeah, I think hopefully there's some transfers to maybe sort out next week because I do think that one of those United guys is going to have to go. And to be honest, your Arsenal double up. Little bit of a tricky game against United, I think, as in because it's a big game. You know, United haven't been amazing, but they do tend to raise their game against Arsenal. So more problems for the future, but hopefully you earn enough points this week to, mitigate against any hiccups next week. Let's move to all about FPL. This is a 3-4-3 this time. Sanchez of Chelsea in goal. Henry, Estupiñán, Chilwell as the back three, and Burmo, Saka, Foden, and Diaby as midfield four, and then a front three of Pedro, Haaland captained, and Jackson. Interestingly here, Maddison on the bench first sub, Botman and Bayer. But I suppose, looking at the team, I mean, where would Maddison go in anyway? I suppose maybe in for Pedro. That's
In
probably
for Pedro.
the challenge there.
That's what I would do. I'd play Maddison. I'd start Maddison. I think he's going to start. I think Postecoglou's comments make me think he's going to start Maddison. I know that there was a slight, we'll see, but I think if he's fully trained today and there's been no repercussions, he'll start him tomorrow lunchtime. So for me, I'd play Maddison. I'd bench João Pedro and have him as the first sub. I mean, that is actually what I'm doing with my team. And then the rest of it looks really nice. Like I really like the Henry pick. I think that's really nice. He's a player that I would have liked this week. I think the midfield looks great. Obviously, a captain in Haaland. Nico Jackson's a nice bit of a pun. I like the fact Botman's already sat there ready for the fixture change. So there's not a lot of change with this team. I think be worth keeping an eye on Sanchez moving forward because, of course, nice fixture this weekend. But if Chelsea do sign another goalkeeper, then you might not want Sanchez long term. But then you can go anywhere, really. You can make a change to your goalkeeper if you need to, or just play Turner for a couple of weeks until you wild card. So, yeah, I think the only thing I'd do differently with this team is I'd start Madders.
Yeah, well, in the words of a previous Jackson, you can make that change, as you say.
Yeah.
So we've had actually another super chat from FPL El Hadari who thanks us for his help earlier on. Just a reminder to people, this is a great way to support the channel. If you want guaranteed answers to your questions, super chats is the way to go. We'll do our best to answer any others, but super chats we will answer absolutely, definitely. This is testament to the fact that a Friday night deadline is mega stress because he obviously was asking which of those four players to bench so he could roll. He's now wondering if we're talking about benching Richarlison, should I sell him to get Sterling and then bench Pedro instead? And then, of course, the alternative is to continue rolling and bench Richarlison. So he's asked a second stage question.
Oh, so this is hard because I actually really like the Sterling thing. And I just don't know if I've gone absolutely mental. That I am slightly worried that I have gone mad with the Sterling pick. I think I would. What would I do? It'd be interesting to know what the rest of his team looks like because who is Sterling the best pick in that midfield? Mate, I think I'd just bench him and roll the transfer and get the news about Sterling. Let's see how he is this game week and then go from there. I think that's what I'd be inclined to do.
Okay, yeah. Apologies. I think we might have had a slight connectivity lag there. I think we came back in just on the end of Sam's answer there. Although, would you mind just repeating it just in case FPL Eldari missed it in terms of what your final conclusion was?
Yeah, sorry. I think for me, I'd just wait. I think I just bench him and wait it out because I like the Sterling thing. I really do, but I don't know. I don't know that I'd hang my hat on it. He could easily outscore Richarlison, but I think I'd be inclined to just play a little bit safe, bench Richarlison and watch Sterling because we might know, well, hopefully we will know a little bit more about Chelsea by sort of 10 o'clock tonight and then we'll know how to invest in them for next week.
Yeah. Sounds like a good idea to me. Always worth rolling that transfer if you can. We've had another super chat, actually, this time now from Connor, who's paid €5. So thank you very much for that. He said, would you start Cash before Udogie this week? And if so, why?
Good question. No, see, I think I'd start Udogie if I had him over Cash. Just to think Udogie's position against Man United was so attacking. He could easily get some attacking returns this week against Bournemouth. I think Bournemouth, the way that their style of play is such that they, under the new manager, are much more attacking, and that does leave space. Now, does that mean that they might score a goal against Spurs? Yeah, absolutely. But the way that Spurs' defenders have been performing in the Premier League so far, they've been the ones that have been getting the attacking returns. And I think, with Burnley, we know that they can be solid defensively when they want to be. They were in the Championship last season. Obviously, there's a risk with Martinez not potentially being there in goal that might mean slightly weaker defence from Villa in terms of the clean sheet potential. So I think the clean sheets are fairly even between the two. So I'd probably go with Udogie just on positioning alone and the fact that he's getting further forward than Cash is.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah, for sure. It's all about those attacking returns, isn't it? So yeah, thank you very much, Connor, for the super chat. And just a quick reminder, we got 17 minutes left. So if you absolutely need an answer, follow the likes of FPL, Adari and Connor and do a super chat. In terms of other questions, though, we do have another team to have a look at, which is a Virals team. And whilst Sam is just having a peruse of it, I'm just trying to find someone who said, it was Karma Yoza Dakpa says, David, make your transfer. Don't worry, I've done it. It's sorted. I've checked it on every possible device I have on my team. It has loaded across all of them.
I was just double checking mine and I'd saved it right.
Yeah, because you sometimes wonder, have I not hit the save button? But if it's loaded on the app, it's loaded on desktop, I think I'm good to go. I think I'm locked. I'm ready. So yes, that's the position that I'm in. A Virals team then. Martinez, Stupinan, Chilwell and Shaw. And I'm pretty sure this one came with a question of do I sell Shaw for, I think it was Diaz. But then Martinelli, Rashford, Saka and Burmo, Pedro, Jackson, Haaland as the captain, Gabriel Bayer, Nakamura on the bench returner. I mean, the obvious problem here, of course, is Shaw. And yeah, so a Viral, if you're watching, here is Sam telling you who to get for sure.
Yeah, I would get a City defender in there because you've only got the one City attacker. So Diaz does make sense. That's what I would do. I'd do Shaw to Diaz with that team. You've also got the Gabriel problem as well, sat on the bench potentially. So you could, if you wanted to, start Gabriel, but I think I'd do Shaw to Diaz because Shaw's out longer term.
And United defence doesn't look amazing, really. As in, it's giving up lots of chances, even against Wolves. So I think it's not in a place that we saw it last year, even if it is home against Forest. So longer term, I just think he needs to go, doesn't he? FPL Marshall, who actually may well be the FPL Marshall who's actually in the chat, has reached out on Twitter as well. Johnston in goal, Saliba, Estupinan, Chilwell as the back three, Martinelli, Saka, Rashford and Bruno. So we've got another big four, the double for the big red teams. Burmo, Jackson and Haaland. And then Shaw as first sub, interestingly. Mubama as second sub, Kabore as third sub, and like most people, Turner is the substitute goalkeeper. So interesting team here, because I wonder if FPL Marshall, and of course, Marshall, you are in the chat, so if you've got additional notes for us, chuck them in there and we'll pull that through. Kind of looks like they're in a position where they can actually afford to bench Shaw. But we have already talked about the fact he's out for a while. So I suppose people who are in that position, what would you advise?
I would do something, I think, because the bench is very weak at the moment because Mubama's not playing, Kabore, all right, he's there and he'll start. But it is a weakened bench. So my inclination would be to do something that sets you up for next week with Shaw and just have somebody there. So whether you want to go for somebody like Rico Henry or Udogie and, go cheaper, or whether you want to go for Diaz, like we talked about for the last team that we saw, I would do one of those transfers, I think. Now, that might give you a bit of a benching headache for this week if you go with one of those because they've got nice fixtures. But I think that would longer term put you in a nice position. So my inclination would be to deal with Shaw now, I think. Unless it's for a hit. If you've already done a transfer, I wouldn't take a hit to deal with it. I'd just leave it.
Yeah, well, FPL Marshall says in the chat he's looking at a -4 next week. So he's not thinking of one for this week. But also, I do like the idea of sometimes making a transfer. If your team, if you feel like your starting 11 is good enough for this week, and I concur with Sam, I think this team is good for this week, but the bench needs some work. Actually, beefing up that defense, beefing up that bench, I should say, and potential rotations in the future is a good way to go. I'm just going to stick the season ticker on the screen for now, which is showing game weeks 3 to 8. But what I was looking at earlier was some future fixture swings that may come along, and sometimes if you've got the luxury ability to get into that fixture swing 2 or 3 weeks before it happens, sometimes that can be useful. So I mean, I don't think there's necessarily a terrible decision here to go for Botman, for example, because you're going to want him from game week 6, and if you've got him already on your bench for now, you can just bring him in, and when everyone else is scrabbling around to get him, for example, maybe not necessarily this week, because of course a Liverpool game, it might be hard for them to keep a clean sheet, but they only conceded 1 against City, so who knows? It's not necessarily the worst thing to do, I think. So could have a look at the season ticker, work out where those fixture swings are. If your team is in a good enough position, it doesn't need anyone new to the starting 11 this week. Think about how you can use your bench to set you up for a better starting 11, like game week 6 or something like that. I think is a good way to do it.
Yeah, the only thing I would say to add to that is that because you've got the double up of Arsenal and Man United midfielders, it might be that if you wait a week, you can sell one of those guys and get Trippier instead of Botman. So then you just got to think that would be my advice for all of this stuff, is just think a little bit ahead as to who's the player that you really want more longer term for teams like Newcastle, and then work out how it's best to distribute that budget. So for now, you absolutely could leave it as it is. But then moving forward, I think moving him to somebody that gives you the long-term fixtures, be that, a second Chelsea defender, or be that one of the Spurs defenders, or be it Newcastle, Man City, it does make sense.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we're inundated with super chats now. We got a few extras. So Russell now sent us £2 super chat. Thank you very much, Russell. Good way to support the channel. Thank you very much. Asking Salah to Foden and Archer to Isak, or Alvarez or Jackson. So I see. So Salah to Foden, right? So that's saving all that money.
That makes sense.
And then Archer to Isak, Alvarez or Jackson. So they're like the options that he's sort of weighing up there, basically.
So Salah to Foden, yes. Archer to one of those guys is tough, actually. So Alvarez is the one that's got the most form and the nicest fixture this week. Isak has got good form, not a great fixture, but Liverpool defensively very poor. So I could see him returning against them and sets you up nicely for the weeks that are going to follow. Jackson is a punt. Is a punt on whether we can see him return on the promise, but we've not seen that so far. Of them, I think having Foden, Alvarez and Haaland is potentially too much of a rotation risk for me personally. I just fear that a little bit. So I'd take Alvarez out if you're already going to have Foden. Isak or Jackson? I don't know. It's tough, that one. I might be inclined to go with Isak because I don't think Liverpool will clean sheet. I think Newcastle will score against them. And I think that puts you in a nice position ahead of the curve for people wanting to invest in Newcastle from 5 onwards.
Yeah, Newcastle's fixtures, for people's benefit, are Liverpool at home, Brighton away, Brentford at home, and then it's game week 6, Sheffield United away, Burnley at home, West Ham away, where they get a bit nicer. But, I mean, the thing is, this Newcastle team looks pretty good this year. So, I mean, it may even do pretty well against some of those really nice teams in there. I'm probably going to rush us off to the next Super Chat, so make sure we can get them all in before deadline, because we have only got 10 minutes left now. So we'll do our best to answer these as best we can. A third Super Chat from FPL Eldari, who's like a Super Chat hero at this point. He says, Sam asked for the full team, so here it is.
Oh, I love this.
So Chilwell, Colwill. Well, it's actually Cole, Sal, but I know that's Chilwell, Colwill and Saliba. Bruno, Saka and Burmo, Salah. Rich and Roll or Sterling is the question, right? Haaland, Pedro, and just also encouraging everybody else, hit the like button and use Super Chats. So thank you very much. What a hero he is. We appreciate your support. So that's what he's working with. That's the rest of his team in terms of like, can he afford to bench Richarlison with that in mind, or should he improve it by getting Sterling and then benching Pedro instead?
I like that team as it is. I think you can afford to bench Richarlison, wait on Sterling, see what he does tonight. I don't think. Look, even if Sterling goes off tonight, all that's going to do is solidify that that's the right pick to go for Chelsea. It's not going to hurt rank because he's very lowly owned. He's a massive differential. I don't think Richarlison will do much against Bournemouth. I hope I'm totally wrong. I hope Richarlison goes mad. I just don't see it. I don't see it. So I think you can afford to bench Richarlison. Know that that's the spot that you want to replace, and then deal with that next week, because the rest of that looks good. The other thing is it's almost a shame that you don't have just that little bit extra that you could get to Foden this week, because I think that's the thing that team is missing, is Foden in the middle. So if you had the extra 0.5, then Rich to Foden, or 0.6, Rich to Foden, I would have done.
Okay, well, there we are. We got there in the end. It took us 3 super chats to get
Sorry.
it spot on. No. I'm joking in many ways. We appreciate the support, Eldari, so thank you very much for that. But actually does demonstrate the point, actually, that when you are sending in your questions, it is useful sometimes to give us an idea of what the rest of the team looks like, because so many of these questions are team-specific. There might be one question where it's like, in isolation, I'd pick player A, but bearing in mind the rest of your team, I'd actually pick player B. So let that be a lesson to everybody out there when they ask their questions. There's right and wrong ways of doing it, and Al Hadari has shown the way. Tyler has given us a super chat as well. £5 super chat. Thank you very much, Tyler. Benching headache. Do I play Gusto or Saliba, or do I bench boost with Turner, Gusto, Tarkowski, and Edouard?
I wouldn't bench boost it. I don't think there's enough on the bench there to bench boost that. Would I play Gusto or Saliba? That's a tough one, because they've both got good potential for clean sheets. I would play Saliba, I think, over Gusto. I think you have to play the more premium of your assets.
Yeah, he's a bit more nailed
in this case
as well.
More nailed.
Well, that we know of. Gusto might be more nailed in a couple of weeks' time, but what we know now is that Saliba is more essential to that team than Gusto is.
Yeah, and I think also, Arsenal have got a really nice home fixture. It's a really nice home fixture against Fulham, who just don't have any attackers that are converting goals at the minute. So I think you have to go there. And Saliba has got attacking threat as well, particularly, from set pieces and stuff. So I'd go with Saliba over Gusto.
One other thing that I'm just seeing in the chat, which I don't know how accurate it is, so please don't take it as gospel, is just seen some people saying that Gusto's not playing, and I've seen
definitely mention them.
Yeah, I've seen a few things come through in the chat, rumours flying about on social media, as often happens this close to a deadline, that Jackson and Chilwell start, which I suppose we wouldn't be too shocked at. So do keep an eye on. I can't confirm that. It's Aina Moore in the chat has said Gusto not playing. So if that's something that you've seen on social media, and there's perhaps maybe a link to a source for that, by all means stick it in the chat, and we can help disseminate that to everybody else as well. So yeah, do have a look for that if you've got the time to do it. We've got another super chat, Steve, this time from all the way from the US, $5 super chat. Thank you very much, Steve. I have Chilwell, Akanji, Saliba, Estupiñán, Richarlison, Bruno, Saka, Martinelli, Foden, Jackson, Haaland, Pedro, and 2 free transfers. Who to transfer, what transfer, and who to bench. Oh, my days. You are in a...
What a team.
What a team that is. He doesn't say who his goalie is, to be fair, but, how would you... Wow, I mean, that by the way, that looks like a team where the transfer you make is on your bench, so that you've got the guy that you need maybe, in 4 game weeks' time, because, wow, I mean, that's one heck of a team.
Yeah. I mean, I'd bench Richarlison if you're talking about who to bench.
Yeah, that's true.
Of them, I think you bench Richarlison. I think the other option is that you sell Richarlison. That's probably what I'd use my second transfer for. I would, just to cause you more of a benching headache, I think I would sell Richarlison and buy Mbeumo. That'd be what I would do.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's probably the way to do it.
I mean, you've got a bigger benching headache. I appreciate that. But you just bench Pedro. Bench Pedro. And
he's definitely benchable this week, isn't he? So yeah, that seems the way to go. Ivan Skelly, there are no parking spots. One of my favourite people from earlier on has also super chatted as well. A €2.49 super chat, but there isn't actually a question attached to it. So if it's possible that you were trying to give us a question and it didn't, and you just didn't go in, because I appreciate it's a bit fiddly, and it is apparently your first ever super chat. If that's what you were attempting to do, put your actual question in the normal chat, and we'll pick it up. We got 4 minutes to go. So if you can squeeze it in, we can get you an answer. While we wait for that, I do just want to run through 2 more teams so that I can, at the very least, say to the people who tweeted us that we've had a look at them. See if we can do it in 4 minutes, Sam. Tarzan the Wookiee, incredible name. I'm not going to do an impression of either of those people. Anana, Udogie, Gvardiol, Estupinan, Son, Jota, Erdegaard, Fernandez, Eze, Watkins captained, Pedro, no Haaland. What is this team?
No Haaland or Watkins as captain.
But it's not like a bad team. That's the weird thing. It's like, actually, I didn't notice it was different to everybody else until I didn't see Haaland. So,
the no Haaland thing's an issue. The fact that there's no City attacker in there is an issue. Like I'd want.
Yes.
I mean, there must be loads of money in the bank, surely, with this team. I'd be looking for a way to get, like, I'd sell Gakpo for Alvarez to give me a City attacker. I think.
Yeah, and then bench Pedro.
Yeah. There's no Brentford attacker either, so it depends on how much money you've got available. But getting in Mbeumo for Eze, if you've got that extra bit of budget, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to have it actually. If you sell Gakpo for Alvarez, then you're going to have the money to upgrade Eze to Mbeumo. So that I'd make 2 transfers on that. That's what I'd do. And you cannot cover Haaland this week, I don't think.
With a Watkins
but at least
captaincy.
But at least you'd have a City attacker in Alvarez, and you'd have Mbeumo in there, which I think could be good this week.
Okay. Ivan Skelly, there are no parking spots, has given us the question, guys, Chilwell as captain, or is it too much of a gamble? What a question, Ivan. We love that.
I don't captain somebody in the first game of the game week because it ruins the rest of the game week for me if they blank.
It's a famous Gandhi expression.
Don't like that. I don't mind him as a captain, actually, weirdly. If he was playing on Sunday, I probably wouldn't so much object to it, but I think don't overthink this. Just captain Haaland this week. Like, I think last week there was enough of a fixture swing for Salah that it made sense. This week I'm just putting it on Haaland and not overthinking it because it's Sheffield United.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go. There's not enough viable alternatives that can protect you. It's all about strength in numbers when it comes to the Haaland captaincy. You really need to catch him on a week where enough people have deserted him to really do it without it being so risky. And as you say, the Salah one was perfect. This week, absolutely not. We've got 2 minutes. So the final team I had sent in, Ivo Fernandez, Pickford and Turner as the goalies, 0.4 in the bank, Stupinan, Udogie, Chilwell, Zinchenko and Baldock as the back 5. This is what they've sent is their team from the transfers page, so I don't know what they're doing in terms of starts, but they've got 1 free transfer and 0.4 in the bank. Jota, Maddison, Salah, Fernandez, Bernardo Silva, Haaland, Pedro, Osula. What should they do with that 1 transfer? It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it's a 3-5-2, isn't it? Because Osula, easy bench. So you've got Pedro and Haaland up front.
I would sell one of the Liverpool assets. I would either sell Jota or Salah, probably Salah, and I would instead get Mbeumo. That's what I would do.
Nice. Yeah, because you've got Bernardo Silva, who was flagged when the screenshot was sent in. I think he's probably unflagged now because of the quote we had come out earlier on. Well, there we go. We've managed to get through all those teams. Oh, we got there in the end, Sam, and it looks like we've both got our own teams all locked in as well. I will just double check it again. I'm not seeing anything come through that has made me think that any of my players are in danger in any way. And we've just hit the deadline. We've just hit the deadline as well. The game is updating and will be available soon. So we made it to deadline. Well done, everybody. Well done, everyone in the chat as well. Thank you also, everyone, for sending your super chats in at the right time, because I was absolutely convinced someone would send one in at 6:29 p.m. and we would only be able to give them about 45 seconds worth of what they'd paid for. So thank you, everybody, for getting them in time. So yeah, we've done it. Ivan Skelly says in the end that he's captained Enzo. So wow. What a guy. There's no parking spots for this man.
Hopefully he gets a penalty and scores it this week.
Fingers crossed. I mean, it's not a bad fixture to captain someone in. And certainly if this game was maybe in Gameweek 8 or 9 and we'd seen Chelsea rip teams apart, I mean, so he could be way ahead of the curve. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you have gone for a Chelsea player tonight, then you absolutely could be ahead of the curve, because most FPL managers, probably myself and you, David, included, will be looking to do that next week. So if you've gone early and they perform tonight and you've got the right one, then you're in a nice position for next week already.
Absolutely, which is always a good way to think. You've always got to think about next week. You don't want to be chasing points. You want to be making sure you're setting yourself up for the future. So, yeah, they're good ways to do it. John Cahill said that he has just captained the Irish Haaland. I'm guessing, is that Evan Ferguson?
Surely not.
Well, who's the Irish Haaland? John Cahill, you have to let us know in the few minutes we've got left who the Irish Haaland is. Some nice
on
comments.
Purpose he's done this or by mistake?
Oh, I don't know. Just captain the Irish Haaland. It doesn't mention accidents. We'll find out in a minute when he answers the question. Thank you to Kilo, who's just subscribed to the channel. So actually, I will just take that opportunity just to remind people, if you've enjoyed this deadline stream, do subscribe to the Fantasy Football Scout YouTube channel. Smash that like button as well. Smash it so hard it breaks and you need a new one. I think that's how it goes on YouTube these days. And hit the bell notification too, because then you're not going to miss any other bits of content. I'll just run everybody through what you can expect over the weekend. On Saturday evenings, Karam does a live stream at 8:30 UK time called Stats of the Day. Yes, of course, that is a completely intentional pun on Match of the Day. It goes and has a look at all the Saturday games and Chelsea match as well. Some statistical things that have come out, analysis from an FPL perspective, and of course live chat discussion for you guys to all get involved in as well. And then on Sunday, kind of the same thing really with Gianni and myself. It's supposed to be between Gianni and Ali, but Ali, being of course the reigning FPL champion, is always very busy.
Oh, yeah.
He's globe-trotting and actually right now is on a plane on his way to the UK.
Yes, he's coming over, isn't he, to go to his 2 matches that he gets for winning FPL last season. I think I'm seeing him on Tuesday.
Hey, there we go. I hadn't realised that. Wow, incredible. Well, what a week for him. And it does just mean that he's not available on Sunday. So it will be me and Gianni. It's very disingenuous. It's called FPL Winners because it's like, who's won the game week? And we're going to do it with the guy who's won FPL. And it's me and Gianni. Like, I ain't won FPL. So, yeah, you can join us for that at 7 o'clock on Sunday. And then next week, of course, we'll have the Scoutcast on Monday. Goals Imminent on Tuesday. General's Orders as well. A couple of other bits and bobs analysing the key talking points of the weekend. Deadline Dilemmas on Thursday, team news and deadline stream on Friday, but also Q&A with yourself and Az.
Well, can we just all please note that I've had no technical issues today. My sound has worked beautifully. There's been no complaining. I blame Az for all of our technical issues that we had on the Q&A.
Nuclear Atoms earlier on, and I think FPL Marshall were both sort of saying, in David we trust. Clearly, it's something to do with me.
It's an Az thing. Az and I will be going with the Q&A on Thursday again because he's away on Friday. So yeah, we'll be doing a Q&A on Thursday again, and hopefully.
Oh, sorry, it's on Thursday, of course, yeah.
Yeah, hopefully we found a workaround for the technical issues. We spent about half an hour after the stream on Thursday sorting out the issues. So I'm hoping that now he's all sorted and by Thursday we'll be fine. We're going to have a trial run on Sunday. He's coming over on Sunday to see us and watch the Liverpool game with us. So we'll sort it out then.
Even though I'm one of you guys and one of the many content creators, I feel really like a fanboy of this sort of like Avengers Assemble moment where Az is going over for dinner at the FPL family's house and to watch the Liverpool game as well. Like, I just love that. Just give us some content. I want Insta stories.
There will be.
I want some live stuff on X or whatever it's called now, or whatever it's going to be called on Sunday. You guys need to make some serious content out of that because in front of a television and there's football on, Az is very, very demonstrative. I can tell you. So
yeah, we're going to have an early barbecue and then watch the 2 games. That's the current plan. So hopefully the British weather holds up and it works well.
Oh, it's going to be good. I can't wait to watch that. In and of itself is a television event I want to be a part of. I want to watch that. We could live stream it from the Scout YouTube channel, but I think bearing in mind the tech problems Az had last time, maybe it's not a good idea. So yeah. We've had confirmation, by the way, John Cahill did captain Evan Ferguson. He said Evan Ferguson captain is never a mistake. So, I mean, fingers crossed for you, man. I mean, I want to see that come off.
He's going to start, according to Zerbi, he's starting. So,
he's the guy with the highest expected minutes all game week because we already know he's going to start. So, good luck, my friend. Hopefully the crack, as they say in Ireland, is good. So, yeah. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there so everybody can get on with the rest of their evenings and enjoying the Chelsea-Luton game. And, of course, me and Sam will also be doing the same as well. So we're going to head off and enjoy that. But, yeah, as I said earlier on, thank you to everybody who joined in. It's been a fantastic fantastic chat throughout the evening. Thank you, Sam, for coming along as well. It's been good fun to have you. Hopefully that wasn't too frazzling for your brain. I suppose it was good that you made your transfers before you came on.
Yeah, no, I actually really enjoyed this. This has been my first ever deadline stream. I've enjoyed this. I'll come back again if you'll have me. But, yeah, no, it's been good because yeah, you can have a vote, like your Salah vote. Although I noticed that's gone up to 58% now. So
I think
Salah,
I made the right decision according to
you think
chat.
you've done all right. Yeah, the chat think you're right. But yeah, if you'll have me back, I'll happily come back again another day.
Well, we'll let you know in 3 to 5 working days, and then
okay, great. Send me a letter.
Yeah, we'll do. But yeah, with that, I'll leave you guys to enjoy the evening and tune into the weekend's content. And fingers crossed, green hours for all of you. So we'll see you next time.